Hello, my name is Maëla Séguin, and I am the Students and Young Professional Ambassador for the Canadian Network for Neglected Tropical Diseases. And today I am joined by Dr. Ana Sanchez, who is a professor at Brock University in Ontario. And we are here to discuss her work with neglected tropical diseases, and more specifically, teniasis and sister cirrhosis.
Mhm.
So thank you very much, Dr. Sanchez, for being with me today.
My pleasure.
And so first, can you please introduce yourself and discuss your background leading up to your current role as a professor with Brock?
Certainly. First of all, thank you for the invitation and for your work with NTDs. And I'm always happy to help raise awareness about these important diseases that are so prevalent worldwide. My name is Ana Sanchez, as you mentioned, and I am a professor at Brock University. I've worked at Brock University for a little more than 20 years now, and this is my second professional life. My first life in this profession was in Honduras, where I'm originally from, and where I used to work in the National Autonomous University as well. So tapeworms were the topic of both my master's and my PhD. And then soon after, life brought me to Canada soon after I finished my PhD. But my passion for global health and parasites is just grew stronger. And at Brock, I've been championing the interest and the investment on NTDs.
And can you describe your current work?
Sure. It's been varied because trying to adapt to a Canadian interest, Canadian students' interests. I've the beginning was more trying to perhaps do what was more relevant here because the country wasn't ready. There was no such NTD network. There was no a lot of awareness, and it was very hard to get grants. Was able to get grants from the CIHR and later on from a consortium of grants to do work on not just infectious and neglected tropical diseases, but also in capacity building.
And so in your work with parasitical diseases, infections, you've also worked with neglected tropical diseases such as teniasis and cysticercosis.
Yes.
So can you explain to us what teniasis and cysticercosis are?
Yeah. Well, this is one interesting parasite. It's called Taenia solium, and it's a tapeworm. The interesting part is that it took researchers and clinicians a long time to discover that the two stages of these parasites were from one parasite and the same. One in pigs, in their meat, where they see the larva that receives different names depending on the country. But we know that there are cysts, they are called cysts. That's why it's cysticercus. They look like a little pomegranate seed, if you can imagine that, inserted in the meat of pork or pigs, right? So these exist in pork-eating countries, particularly countries where it's very informal economy. So it's not like an industrialized pig farm. It's like backyard. The family has 2-3 pigs. They have to fend for themselves, and then they scavenge for food, and then they contaminate themselves with human feces. And then this is one side of the parasite. The other one is the tapeworm, which is the long 4-meter long tapeworm. And it's called tapeworm because it looks like a white tape, really long and flat. It can accommodate itself in our intestines. People acquire that tapeworm by eating the pork meat that is not properly cooked. And that little pomegranate seed contains that little head that once inside your gut is going to grow. And in 3 months, it's going to measure 4 or 5 meters long. Incredibly, it doesn't cause a lot of symptoms because it's very quiet, it's very thin, and it's there quietly absorbing your nutrients. And it can live for years in that person without treatment. Now, that is the natural cycle. So in the pig, it's called cysticercosis, or more technically, porcine cysticercosis. And it can go anywhere in the pig, but for particular reasons for transmission, we're interested more in the skeletal muscles. It can go in the eyes or in the brain as well, but normally those are not eaten by humans. And the tiniasis is the human harboring that tapeworm. And the human is just like a carrier of that tapeworm, nurtures it, gives it food, gives it shelter, and it's a true parasite. Tapeworm is there just using us and then shedding in the person's stools those infectious eggs. Now, in the human, although we mentioned that in the pig, it goes mostly, or we're interested mostly in their muscles. In human, there's a particular attraction for the central nervous system. So this little pomegranate seed will get seated in the spine, anywhere in the spine, the ventricles, or brain parenchyma. So anywhere in the central nervous system, not just in the brain, sometimes in the eyes as well, because they're part of the central nervous system. They may go to the muscles, they may go under the skin, but those cases are not as obviously clinically dangerous. But if you have a parasite of 5 millimeters big, and then it's in your eye or in your brain parenchyma or obstructing one of the ventricles, this is when neurocysticercosis, the neurological infection of this tapeworm in the human, then that's when we have the problem. And just to give you a couple of signs and symptoms, the most common would be late onset epilepsy. You can treat people with the tapeworm for sure, and the treatment is effective. You can eradicate the tapeworm from the intestines, but it's very hard to find those people. If you only have 2 people among 500, you really have to look at all of them, and do stool samples or antigen samples or DNA, whatever. You have to go to the community. It's just very hard to find. With people with neurocysticercosis, the problem is that the parasite may be quietly living inside your brain, for example, for years without people knowing. And once you start to get symptoms, a lot of the time it's because the parasite starts dying and it causes like an inflammatory reaction around it. And when it dies, it leaves a scar and a lesion in your brain parenchyma. And that's never going to disappear. So it's going to have epilepsy for the rest of their lives, even though the parasite is dead already. Very few cases you can catch the cysticerca in the brain still viable, and they are susceptible to treatment. You can treat them with antiparasitic drugs under medical supervision, normally hospitalized because of the reaction that may cause by killing all these parasites at the same time. But it has treatment. It's just that most of the time it's too late, and you have to treat the consequences of, which is long term.
Now, some of your other professional interests include research partnerships and capacity building. So could you explain to us what a fair and equitable research partnership looks like to you, and why it's important, and the impact in NTD research and advocacy?
Yeah, I mean, I am that person from a low and middle income country, right, that gets approached by other researchers from Europe or North America. And it's very common, and I've experienced myself, the lack of principles for global health research. And one thing for me is important is that the partnership has to have, I don't know if you probably are aware of the CCGHR principles, where you have respect for the other partner. And we both, together, we build the research agenda, and we both are responsible for the things that we do. But everybody offers the best of their talent. Giving recognition to the partners, discussing things together, respecting cultural differences is important as well, to be sensitive to differences and power imbalances.
Now, my final question for you, Dr. Sanchez, is as a professor at Brock University, you must work with students and young professionals with NTDs. And so what are some ways in which you've been able to engage youth, young students and professionals in the world of NTDs? And why is it important to engage youth in the fight against NTDs?
Well, absolutely. Well, first of all, the courses that I teach, medical microbiology, global issues in infectious disease, and tropical parasitology, particularly the last one, they all touch on NTDs. And most of the time, students are like, oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that this parasite exists that affects your heart. There you go, or your eyes, or the causes of blindness. So it's super important to build in a proper scientific knowledge in the courses and in the labs. That's one way. The other way is supporting, like say, the Canadian Association for Global Health has a chapters in every university, and they are normally undergrads. So I am their mentor, and I help them. This group is just getting started, but we have put together events for the Sustainable Development Goals or for food security, or snake bite, which is another of the NTDs. It's even more neglected than NTDs because the antiophid venoms, antidotes, are very rare to find, and a lot of people die of snake bites just because they are too far away from the next clinic with an antidote. So we have showed movies, and we even have snakes coming to Brock, to raise awareness. So we do a lot of stuff in terms of education. My grad students work on that, and once they go and they continue their lives, if they become a physician, many of them study medicine, they will be more aware. I brought 5 groups, almost a little more than 100 Brock students, 200 with me in a global health field course. It was amazing. I only stopped because there was a coup d'etat the last time we were there, and it became a bit dangerous. I normally now bring my grad students only, and 2 or 3, and we have more control. But all of these people that have benefited from my courses, from going in the field course, from undergrads to even directed readings, and hopefully growing, and move away from that, ick factor that many people in high-income countries have when you say parasites, when you say worms, and you say lice. There's this factor, almost stigmatizing, of the kind of research that you do. But if they knew the importance, and actually improving people's lives. So I think we need to understand that, because there's a lot of humanity in the work of NTDs as well. You have to have that humanity. And I think that makes better people. So I'm very proud of many, many, many Canadian students that have gone into this journey with me. At the beginning with a little bit of ew, and then at the end it's like, oh my God, I love this. I never knew it was possible. So they just have to pass that moment where they're like, oh, I don't think I can do this. And there they go. They end up in Liverpool, tropical medicine, or in Sweden, or in Colombia. It doesn't matter, but they're taking it with them. So it's quite rewarding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Sanchez. This concludes our interview. So thank you for your time. And on behalf of the Canadian Network for Neglected Tropical Diseases, I would like to thank you for all of your efforts in the fight against NTDs. And this was a pleasure to be able to host this interview with you. So thank you once again, and I wish you all the best in your future work.
Well, thank you so much, Maëla, and I thank you for your work and for the NTD network work as well. It's marvelous that it does exist. I am very proud to say that in Canada there's an NTD network, and people are like, in Canada, really? You know, it's not too cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, but hopefully we get more and more interest and more researchers that can take the torch with them. And let's keep making people's lives better. So thank you for the invite, and it was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.